knowledge from? Is that going to be a consequence of logical structure, specifically like a
If
classical
you're
logic
asking me if I can
thesis?
present, no, obviously I'm not saying I can present an inferential argument for the thing that determines what is inferentially justified. Laws of logic are going to be ineffable because any attempt to question them are going to presuppose the possibility of the contrary. And that's already going to be self-defeating because the possibility in of itself is to be under laws of logic. So, like, foundationalism is just going to say that you can't coherently question something such as that.
What foundationalism is, it's a ladder of human knowledge. Now, our human knowledge is originally derived from empirical explanandum. If that's not the case, then our attempt at describing anything for that matter would be false. For example, if we're to describe an apple, we cannot identify and essentially predicate an apple if we have not had some type of inferential or empirical like a basis for which we can actually describe an apple. For example, an apple is a round, red, and juicy fruit, right? Without that essentially foundation of empirical explanandum or empirical basis, then an apple would cease to mean, and it would just be words at this point. All words, and words are attempt at, yes.
No, so
Yes.
let me get into this. So basically, you don't understand something by looking at it. Like, you understand something by getting the information from looking at it and then rationalizing it, which is the process of essentially understanding that thing, right? If I had no rationale, I would essentially just be experiencing reality and not really know the contents in which I'm experiencing.
If you had no rationale, you would. Okay, let me just repeat your argument again. If you had no rationale, then you would be experiencing reality without any type of like cognitive process, or not exactly any type of cognitive process, but any type of process for which you can actually like output some type of like I don't know, abstract structure or category.
You could just say understanding, and that would capture it.
To understand anything?
Yeah, it would essentially be equivalent to like you looking at it,
Okay.
but not know what you're looking at, nor not understanding that you're even looking or experiencing. You're not going to be able to like rationalize your surroundings. You're just going to be pure experience.
Okay, so this is where it's going to fall under. So anything that is essentially defined as like an initial category for all essentially like epistemic explanandum, and that can actually be like the antecedent for like empirical
hold on,
explanandum.
pause. I don't want to cut you off, but what's an explanandum?
Explanandum is just like a set of like explanatory events or processes essentially within some type of like, with respect to some category or whatever.
Okay.
So if you were to define, I don't want to get too like give a formal like explanation for this, but if you're to have a category A, and under this category, it's going to include a set of like substructures or objects, and there's going to be morphisms and essentially, God, I forget what it's called. Yeah, morphisms. And God, what's that called? Anyways, there's going to be like a set of objects that's defined under each category. For example, a real life example of this, for example, would be like you can define manifolds, three-dimensional objects, and like other three-space objects under a set of A. That's fine. And that's okay. You don't actually have to directly experience these, but in order to actually make a coherent category or a well-constructed category, that means that you would have to have a set of objects, and these objects that fall under this category A would each have to be identical to themselves. That's fine. You don't need to have any empirical basis for them being identical.
Okay, so there's a big thing. You're talking a lot. I don't want to cut you off, but I want to get some clarification. So, do you think that the understanding of the necessity of the laws of logic are through the rationale, or do you think that you empirically verify something like that?
So no. So my argument is essentially is that if you argue like
Like,
supervenience all from like the laws of logic, and for that to be coherent and well defined, that would mean that the necessary rules for a well defined category would have to adhere bijectively with the objects and the abstract structure itself. So that would be defined
I
as a
wouldn't
set
I
of
wouldn't
objects that are identical to themselves and a set of homeomorphisms that are defined between those objects. And that's to the point where for you to actually define a homeomorphism,
okay, I'm
and
just gonna cut
essentially,
you off. You're making a bunch of
yeah,
claims. Um, what's the
yeah,
justification?
yeah.
Because it
I'll
seems like
just send you. I'll just send you this. But I mean, this is also just
yeah. So I don't understand like what's your particular contention with my understanding of foundationalism. I sent you a definition of foundationalism, which corresponded with my explanation of what it is. And then, like, the debate topic isn't what foundationalism is. The debate topic is, does foundationalism or is foundationalism in confliction with idealism? So,
and
you're trying to meta debate me
if you have a
on
rogue
whether like
definition for
foundationalism is like a good way to acquire knowledge isn't going to actually undercut the validity of the proposition that these things don't conflict.
um, all, yeah, but if we're to actually debate whether or not it's comparison, you can't use a rogue or singular definition. We have to agree on what the most accurate definition for the foundation and the ladder of knowledge
Wait, no, I
essentially looks
completely
like.
disagree. If I say I hold a view, right,
Mm-hmm,
you're going to go under my interpretation of what
mm-hmm.
I see this thing to be.
If you hold the view that foundationalism, where all a posteriori knowledge is a consequence of our own intuition,
I didn't say it was a consequence of our
if that's the
intuition, nor did
case,
I say it was purely a posteriori.
yes, you did. Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
How is empirical knowledge like derived from them?
Wait, empirical knowledge isn't derived from the rationale. The understanding of empirical knowledge is derived from the rationale.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing. That's redundant.
No, that's not true because there can be knowledge about some em- empirical fact. I don't necessarily have access to it.
How do you have knowledge on something without understanding the thing?
Easy. For one, a person can just not have the knowledge, right? But another person can have the knowledge and also have the understanding. But this seems like off topic. Like I
How do
don't.
you? Oh, no. So how do you have knowledge on what the number one is without knowing what one is?
Well, do you need to know what one is fundamentally to know what like exactly to say that you know something? Like you need to know everything about something to say that you know what it is.
For objects that are irreducible in virtue of their own definitions, would necessitate you to understand the rudimentary definition of them and therefore understand it.
Wait, if you're saying there's irreducible, then there needs to be no explanation for why these things are.
The understanding is the knowledge, essentially.
I'm not gonna like debate on like semantics. Like, do you actually have contention with the like main topic? Like, your whole thing was you made the claim that foundationalism and idealism cannot coexist. That's why you started um, talking to me. We're not gonna go into your
Yeah,
definition because
yeah. I know
obviously, if
your
I hold a
claim. You
particular
know,
view, then you're gonna.
I asked you how we derive empirical explanandum or whatever. How we derive these um, series of explanations for empirical phenomena, and your
Empirical. Yeah, it's the rationale.
definition.
I already answered this. This is the rationale. Our rationale is fine tuned through.
Our
Um,
rationale. Okay, and so what is what is the structure that dictates our rationale?
I don't know what you mean by that.
What is the context in which our rationale, consequent of, or what structure defines our rationale to make deductions or inductions of like empirical
Okay, so I
phenomena.
asked you what you mean by structure in that particular sense, and then you can't, when you're given an explanation of what you mean, you can't use the same word that I don't understand.
All right, this is reducible. How like what is our rationale? What does that look like?
What does it look like? Like if
Hmm.
visibly?
No, like can you hash out what our rationale essentially like is?
Yeah, it's just you understanding something.
Okay, you just oh my god. Okay, what are the tools for which we understand something? If you say our rationale, like bro.
Experience, intuitions,
Okay,
logic.
okay. Now, if you were to define what an apple is, going back to my initial topic, then for you to make um, a case for defining an apple, you would have that would have to be predicated on um, what's it called? Sorry, I'm tired. Experience. If that's predicated on experience, that directly
It's
conflicts
not
with
solely
idealism.
predicated. No, it's not solely predicated on experience. And for one, what wait, how does that conflict with idealism? Do you even know what I mean by
Okay, so
idealism? I
if
subscribe
that's
to
true,
analytic idealism.
I don't. Okay, I don't know if you do like any like weird rogue like subcategory of idealism. I'm just gonna assume it's just like the normative thesis or like Berkeley's thesis. Is that
No,
true?
no, no. It's analytic idealism, pioneered by Bernard Castro.
Bernard Castro. So you don't believe in uh mind mind phenomena supervenience?
I don't necessarily know what that means. Um,
Do you believe everything like supervenes the mind, the external world like supervenes the mind?
I think that everything can be reduced to something called phenomenal consciousness.
Oh my! Is this like? Is that just like jargon for panpsychism?
I don't know what that would look like.
Everything is basically reduced to some type of collective consciousness, whether that's like a collection of monads or whatever.
No, I would, it's not in that particular sense, but I would say that they share some similarities. But like I said, whether or not idealism is true or
Okay,
not, that's not the debate proposition.
okay. I mean, I'm not familiar with that term of idealism. I thought you were going under like the normative sense, where essentially it denies the. I mean, this can be through like air theory, Bruce skepticism, or like Berkeley's thesis, like the denial of the existence of like external objects or phenomena.
No,
But do you grant those?
no, yeah. So like under analytic idealism, it actually grants that the external world does exist in some sense. If you want me to run you down the view, I could.
Yeah, I don't have any problems. Then no,
Okay.
it's specifically with like Berkeley's thesis, like mind phenomena supervenience is a contradiction to foundationalism, in my opinion.
Mm. Well,
Would you
yeah,
agree to that? Because I'm trying to
I don't
debate right now.
necessarily, I don't necessarily know.
Okay.
All I knew was just like my position on idealism, which isn't normative. Like wouldn't like just
Do you want to run a debate topic? Yeah, no. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
okay.
Wait, what
I
is
should.
normative
Debate me.
idealism? Never heard of the position before.
It's just basically like the denial or the denial of an external world, essentially.
Yeah,
That
I
it's
just
all
don't
just like an
know.
ideation of the mind.
Yeah, I just don't know how where the normativity comes into play.
The normativity.
Yeah. Um
Sure.
the other person said it's like normative idealism or something.
No,
Sure. Yeah. Sure. I got
no,
you.
I didn't say it was normative. I said it wasn't normative.
Well,
Oh, okay. Never mind. I thought maybe I misheard. I thought you were saying it's you have your own position, but then like normative idealism or something.
Yeah, there was just like I guess a misunderstanding because what he takes for idealism is in the normative sense, and so like
mhm.
I guess there was no
Well, there's
clarification until now.
yeah. I'll just answer like within the scope of ontology. There's like essentially like materialism and like the essentially the contrapositive to that is just going to be idealism. So if you grant the materialist thesis, then these external objects hold material substance, and so they actually exist independently. And the contrapositive is that they're all ideation or a consequent of mental faculty.
Yeah, when you say
And so idealism,
material, my bad,
that's
but
the normativity. It's just like the antonym to or the antonym to materialism in an external, in a like realist stance.
wait, that's I'm so lost. Wait, hold up. So, wait, what do you think? Because all I take normativity to mean is that you have a reason to either believe or you have a reason for a belief or an action or something. And that's I think broadly that's what I understand like
You
normativity
sound
aspect.
familiar as shit. Wait, hold on. Wait, are you that synth guy debated?
Synth guy. She's I'm friends with
Yeah.
I'm
We
friends with
debated on
Synth.
veganism recently. Oh shit.
I debate. Yeah, well, I don't. I know Synth is like a best friend of mine. So I don't. I
Yeah,
maybe
no,
I've debated.
I debated you in a server recently. We never finished that debate, but anyways,
Wait, me or
yeah, I
wait? Do you think I'm
debated you.
Synth?
No. But you're like, okay, don't take this the wrong way, but I think you're kind of a synth goon.
I do be glazing. My best friend. Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, is it okay if I could run a topic up with Makima real quick?
Oh yeah, my bad. I was just to clarify what you mean. Your view was my bad. You're good.
Yeah, you're good. Makima, so you do IRL. All right. What do you usually run?
I mean, I've been studying idealism recently, but I wouldn't say I'm too keen on arguing it yet, because there was two different forms of idealism I was originally studying. So I've been jumping back and forth between those two. Um, I don't know, what topics do you do?
I don't feel like debating that, like panpsychism or like that. Like I don't have a really like strong argument against that right now.
Do you
What do
like
I
have?
do?
Do you?
Uh,
Okay, no, go ahead.
let's see. Um, I do some ethics, abortion, philosophy of the mind. Uh,
That's good.
let's see.
We should
I
debate
could.
about abortion. I'm not gonna lie, Vex. Or whatever.
What's your position?
Um, I am. Well, my actual position is pro sentience, but my other trolley position is gonna be um, most abortions are not gonna be morally permissible.
Most abortion. Okay, anyways, I'll get back to it. Makima, do you do like I don't know? What's a popular topic nowadays? Yeah, philosophy of the mind or
God.
something.
Like what particular
God.
topic in that?
Um, like the hard problem of like consciousness, like materialism versus like immaterialism.
Are you talking about like Spinoza's interaction problem? Oh.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on it?
I'm a strong materialist.
Strong materialist? Are you so okay? So if you're strong materialist, then you're definitely saying that there are no immaterial things, right?
Okay. Yes and no. It's different. That's a good question. For example, if you write a slew of code or whatever, how that's presented in the machine, that's going to be material. But the idea of code itself exists, but mind dependently.
Okay, but is that going to entail that the mind is material or immaterial? Because if you're saying it's immaterial, then um, well, then you'd be a substance dualist. If you're saying it's immaterial, you'd be a substance dualist.
Um, that's a good question. The hmm, maybe I should revise what I said. It's reducible to material phenomena, even though you cannot. It is essentially yeah. I basically am going to argue that that's also reducible. to material phenomena or material interaction. Sorry, I'm really tired. I just got home. Sorry. Yeah,
no, it's all
I'm
good.
just
It's
gonna
all good.
argue about the material.
So do you think like the brain state and the mind are like logically equivalent?
I believe the mind supervenes the brain, and I have an argument for why the mind is necessarily material.
Necessarily.
Yep.
See,
Wait, what would be the contradiction?
It's about the problem of interaction and influence on other bodily and other physical events, essentially, and the coexistence and the biconditional existence of the mind and bodily events, essentially. It's a long argument, but I can give it now if you want.
it's weird because you're saying there'd be no possibility in which idealism is true, right?
There's no possibility in which the mind is immaterial, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, but you don't think there could be facts outside of your epistemic access that could contradict what you, I guess, came to the conclusion is true? Because I don't know, because it seems like when you're talking about things like this, like physics and
For
stuff,
what we
and
for
like the
what we
mind and like
define,
metaphysics, it seems like you're dealing with a lot of like
if I were
induction.
to entertain, if I were to entertain that, then I'd be entertaining our own knowledge on what we of like the semantic agents like provided, like what we know of as what like the words of meaning itself, the
Like
meaning of words
for
itself.
example, you understand that like evidence of the natural doesn't rule out the supernatural, right?
I believe what we define words to be, and if we define an analytic truth or an analytic falsehood that will undermine like the supernatural, then I believe that in this context would necessarily make it false.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but how would you do that in the case of this situation?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's about the idea of what we know of as physical events and the idea of causal closure.
Okay, before you go on, that's there's already
Mhm.
an issue. It's like you're going off of based on like what you know, right? If you want to say like it's likely that things can't be reduced, or like idealism is false,
No,
I can
it
accept
goes
that.
on. It's predicated off the semantics provided and what we know of or what we define an immaterial thing to be. If there's anything to the contrary of what a material thing is ontologically speaking, then it's most likely material, or we're just saying words that just have no meaning.
But that's just presupposing materialism in your premise, though.
Presupposing you haven't heard my argument.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying like that kind of assumes that everything's material, and therefore, if we were to describe anything that doesn't have the properties of material, that'll automatically be immaterial. But it's like could be the case
It's
that
predicated off the proper. It's predicated off the properties and the semantics behind what an immaterial like thing is.
what would you
So
describe an immaterial thing as?
lacks extension in space.
So it just spaceless,
What?
just something spaceless.
It lacks extension, meaning that there is no extendable property for which this thing can be measured in any way, shape, or form.
Well, measured through physical parameters, I would agree, but like, of course, you're not going to be able to um, uh, measure something that's like functionally different from something physical. You're not going to be able to use something physical to measure something non-physical. That's kind of a given.
I'll give you. I'll give you an example. Like something that is physical is something that has extension in space, or something that can be measured. For example, something that you can't exactly like interact with, or like necessarily like really see with like a microscope, but which you can infer is like the amplitude of a wavelength, given that there exists an amplitude in the first place, essentially concludes that this thing has extension or can like be extended upon.
Let me ask you this. So what are your thoughts on quantum mechanics then? Like how like elementary particles essentially exist in like a superposition, right? And this like
Oh,
that tied with like things like holographic principles implies that space isn't really fundamental. And so like
so
it seems then like you could get to like immaterial things from
I
there, at
don't.
least at the quantum level.
People, this comm in general doesn't understand quantum mechanics. It's not a contradiction. Like it's
Oh,
the
I'm not asserting.
states.
I'm not denoting the laws of logic. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying it seems like on the quantum level you get something immaterial.
No, absolutely not.
Well, why not? Are those are the particles that exist in a superposition? Do those occupy space?
Yep.
How would you explain quantum entanglement if it's the case that space is a necessary precondition for all things, right? That are material, then it's not going to be the case that um, particles are going to be
Yes, quantum entanglement grants space also. Quantum entanglement is just there exists like a phenomena between a binary set of particles where if they have like the same angular momentum, which grants the existence of space, and there exists a superposition that's faster than light.
No, but the thing is from
Not
there,
sorry,
like
not a
if
superposition, an interaction that's faster than light.
yeah, so I'm more saying like if it's the case that space is fundamental, it's gonna be the prerequisite, right? Or like sort of like um, should be like the deepest reality in which things can interact, right? But the fact that things can interact without actually occupying the same space seems to imply that there's some more fundamental
No, there's
reality
a
under
rate.
that.
There's a rate. No. That's also another flaw that people have. No, it's just the phenomenon is just like faster than light. It's not something that can be observed like directly.
I don't. Do you have anything for that? Because majority of things
Sure,
I've
I'll
seen
just like
regarding
send you. I'll just
entanglement
like send you a
is
paper
that
from
like
MIT.
so you're
Sure.
saying like they're traversing the space between each other, and that's how they're
Yes.
interacting at the speed of light.
No, it's beyond the speed of light. The precondition is I'm not super well versed on this, but if they have the same spin, which is Dirac h over 2 pi with respect to their spin constant, that it's possible that these two things can have a quantum entanglement, and an interaction occurs between them. I mean, this can occur like millions of light years like of distance in between, and they occur like far faster than light
No,
quantitatively. I'll
I'm
just, do you
I'm
want me to
I'm,
just
I'm
like send you
confused. Like, is there like empirical evidence to back this up? Because the issue is that majority of people regarding entanglement says that particles can be entangled regardless of space between, right? And if it's
so
like that they're traveling at the speed of light, then they actually are traversing the space between.
there no it's faster than the speed of light, but
Yeah, yeah,
i'm
yeah. My bad, my
actually
bad. I
I'm not
know
going to send you a
it's
paper
faster.
on this because actually I see what you're getting at. That's not what I mean by having extension in space. Essentially, what I'm going to show is that if there's a like causal influence between like a binary set of particles, and I'm going to like grant like this notion of entanglement that they don't actually like visibly interact with each other. If they're able to influence one another or essentially be the antecedent for a physical change, that physical change then therefore has the capacity to be measured in magnitude, similar to like say you have like a set of pool balls and you strike a ball in the set of pool balls, you can
No,
strike it
I
harder
understand. I
or
understand that
softer, and the
100%. But
resulting no,
that
hold on,
seems
hold on. And
okay.
the resulting change is going to have like is going to have some type of effective magnitude. So there can be an effect, some interaction between them. And if there exists like a magnitude in which you can a magnitude of like the effect or the consequence, then by definition they are material because the effect or the consequent can be extended upon if there exists magnitude.
I would disagree. I would disagree because if my
Oh.
argument is that if you're granting the case for like a stalemate, or maybe you agree that these particles can interact regardless of the space between them, right? That implies that space isn't fundamental, and there's a more fundamental reality probably embedded in which these particles are actually interacting. And if that's the case, that shows that space isn't fundamental. And this space isn't fundamental, you essentially have something at the lower level that's going to be spaceless and spaceless.
So it's not, no offense, I wasn't, that didn't respond, but I'll just run it down. So do you agree that like in this case they're having an interaction?
They're interacting in some sense, yeah.
Okay. And do you agree that like there could be some, I don't know, extraneous factor that could affect like the intrinsic spin of these particles?
I wouldn't know what you mean by that.
Okay. I don't know. I'll give you another example. All right. This resulting interaction, do you believe that can influence a change in extraneous events or whatever, spontaneous change in extraneous events?
Are you asking me if the interaction between elemental particles can like cause a certain change in events?
Can it influence other causal phenomena?
I don't know.
The answer is yes.
How so?
Chaos theory.
Well, my bad. Could you repeat that?
Mm-hmm.
You said what about theory?
And this all ties into why they're strictly physical. Is that
No, I'm saying like, what's the justification for that particular thing that you just said? That's what I'm asking for.
chaos theory posits that all essentially like physical causes, all physical events have physical causes, and these physical events can be the antecedent to a chaotic, essentially like function of
Wait,
non-ordered like dynamic changes in some type of like causal framework. And so granted,
well, I don't think I've gotten to the point where I've accepted that these things are necessarily physical.
I know, but okay. Oh, wait, you don't grant that they're physical? Yeah, so that's what I was going to get at. So if you don't grant that they're physical, then how is it the case that they
hold on.
contain
There's an issue. I'm not granting that they're necessarily physical.
You're saying that it's a possibility for them to be immaterial?
Yeah, like under like my view of analytic idealism, it is possible. In the external world can exist.
Oh my god. Okay. So can you measure, okay, if it's possible, then there's some possible world in which like some elementary particle is non-physical. If that's true, can you like measure something like in immaterial things like energy output or energy state?
By the way, I do want to say you can define non-physical as like it just doesn't exist locally.
No. It's just it lacks extension in space, or it lacks extension.
Well, that would be your particular definition. Like if it were the case that like we were living in a simulation, you wouldn't define the external world or what we think to be the external world as a physical. Like it wouldn't like if we were to compare a video game to like real life, like you couldn't say the video game, right? The reality that is simulated from the computer is something physical. It wouldn't be physical in the same sense that you're talking about the external world that you live in. So I'm saying if it were the case that
that's a different argument. I could make an argument for that being physical as well.
No, it wouldn't be physical.
That's also just presupposing like the validity of like idealism or something in the first place. But
yeah, but it's under we're talking about possibility currently. Like there's a possible world in which this could be the case, and obviously, if we're not taking all the presuppositions that your materialism view goes in, then it could be the case that elementary particles are non-physical.
No, it is not the case that elementary particles are non-physical.
Yeah, in the sense that they don't exist locally. Like they don't have local existence. Like they're not an extension in like
What do you
actual
mean by
space.
local existence?
Yeah, so like in a sense, it kind of be how you define a material, like sort of like an extension of space, right? Like let's talk about the video game, right? So if we're in a video game, right, uh, and you compare that video game to the world, the real world that houses the computer that has the video game, they're not going to be real or physical in the same sense. Because obviously, like you can simulate on a computer someone running forward, but they're not actually traversing any space.
I mean, I make an argument for that as well, that they are.
But in what sense are you traversing space when you're? It's just on a
It's also
computer. The
disanalogous
character
because a
cannot move.
simulation is
The character cannot move
yeah, no,
outside the computer.
no, the simulation is it's not they're not running. Running is not actually occurring. A simulation is just the process of displaying a slew of code through the CPU and the GPU, essentially
That's why it's not
executed through
real.
the
It's
BIOS.
simulated. It's almost artificial, right? So when you talk about
That's
do
just
these places actually exist, right? Exist in the same sense as our physical world, we would say no. These things
this
are
is a different argument. No, it's the same thing as putting a puzzle. It's the same thing as putting a puzzle together or whatever, and that appears to look like, I don't know, like an octopus or a person running or something, right? Like it's not a person running. Like what? It's just
no, it's a simulation.
to
It's a
puzzle pieces.
simulation of somebody running. Just like how you take a photograph of somebody, you don't say the photograph is them. You say that's a photo of them.
No, that's disanalogous. Also,
Wait, no, it's not.
Yes, it is. No, a photograph is it's encapsulating light, which is a real physical phenomena that's happening, and
Wait,
just
it's
reprojecting
irrelevant whether it's
through a photograph.
Wait, it's irrelevant whether it's physical or not. The analogy was to correlate.
I'm not arguing that it's physical. The way they're demonstrating like the phenomena is like fundamentally distinct from one another. A simulation and a photograph. They're not comparable.
The aspect that they both share, right, is that one is not actual running, right, and the other one, if you were to run in the real world, that is actual running. Same how if you were to take a picture of somebody on a photo, that is not actually them, right? That is a photo of them. It is a simulated image of them. It is not them.
It's not a simulated image.
Wait, a photo isn't a simulated image?
It's not a simulated image. It's a collection of light, essentially, that's being encapsulated and reprojected in one instantaneous moment on art paper or whatever.
Pause. You're just describing the same thing I did, just in materialism terms.
I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to get at. I think you're trying to get at that the running is not existing or something.
It's like essentially what you're doing. I just like, let's say I describe an apple to be like red and circular, and then you're just like, no, apple isn't red and circular. Its atoms combination is like in this particular format. Like, no, like we're talking about.
That's an issue with descriptivism. That's not like relevant to this debate.
That has nothing to do with descriptivism.
Yes, it is. That's irrelevant to the debate. That's different because you can actually define like a red ball as also being like circular and round or whatever, and you can change the properties of this ball or this apple. And so at one instantaneous point in time, it's not like fundamentally equivalent.
I know. Like, let's say you name something in a particular time. If that thing changes at any point of time after the thing is named, that it no longer maintains the identity that was previously classified.
That's the issue with descriptivism. The issue with like empirical studies is that we actually like bestow and we essentially like we have a ladder for how we actually describe this phenomena and how we can make predictions and how these things interact at all points in time. It's a function. That's fine. That's different.
Hold on, but I wouldn't say it's actually descriptivism. I would say it's semantic externalism. The way you just described the photo in a different way, right? That I describe the photo, but we're still describing the same thing. But the means in which we
So
describe them are just functionally different.
that's I'm gonna give you an example and how this shows like the thing in question or whatever actually exists, but at instantaneous points in time, like you cannot like I don't know, like visually like describe it as being the same thing or whatever.
Wait,
If you like consider like
do you subscribe to descriptivism?
yes and no. Like I'll give you an example. If you have like a line on a graph or whatever, you can define this graph as f or g, and that's fine, and that's true for all points on the graph. But 1, 1 or whatever, a point on the graph is different than like 2, 1. So at like a different point in time, it's like f is distinct from another or whatever.
Well, then that's just definitely not the same
Descriptively,
object then.
but it's still f. It's
But if
still
you
f.
subscribe to descriptivism, you're not yourself because when you were named as a child, you have changed from them. So you are no longer whatever your name is.
Yeah, I can grant that I've changed.
But that's just like absurd though.
Granting that I've changed is absurd.
Wait, oh, I thought you were granting that that's the case. What I just highlighted, what comes out from your belief of descriptivism. I thought you were
People
granting
get
that.
this. I know what you're trying to get at. I'm just gonna clarify so I'm not like I don't know. You mean would you agree that uh okay, well now this is okay. I was actually just talking about this with someone. Um there are in a way two types of identity. Um I was talking about this earlier. But there's Leibniz's law of identity, which I think you're essentially trying to argue, which I can grant that I am not identical to myself when I was 2 years old. And then there's the like abstract notion of identity, essentially where if you have some type of category, an object is basically morphic to itself, which is true.
That just
If
seems like
that
a
go
it seems
that
like a broad like some sort of
yeah, I'll
like
give you an
broad
example.
Platonist shit, like where like the concept is gonna like the concept of apple is gonna contain every variation of an apple.
No, I no that shit's retarded. I'm not a Platonist.
Well, not
No,
literally. I was
it's
more.
going to be
I'm
like
not saying. Hold on, hold
it's
on.
just,
Before you go on, I wasn't saying that you're a Platonist. I was saying that the core similarity with what you were saying was that there's sort of like the concepts that hold all variations of the thing that it pertains to. Like if you have apple, the concept of an apple, the concept is going to contain every possible variation of what that apple looks like. Right. So if I have a chopped apple, a blue apple, a red apple, the concept is going to encompass all of those different variations.
that's actually somewhat that's somewhat analogous. I mean, I'll give you another example or whatever that ties it together. You know, like looking back at a graph or whatever, the abstract structure that defines like all points in time or whatever is like f or g, and I am f or g, and I am changing throughout time. That's granted, but it's already just like analytically true that f is not identical at time 1 second with respect to 2 seconds or whatever. They're not equal. That's already granted. That'd be a contradiction. That's Leibniz's law of identity. I can grant that that has nothing to do with my view on absurdism. Or, sorry, I was writing about
On
absurdism today
descriptivism.
on materialism.
Oh,
Materialism.
okay. Uh, where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? So, the main thing that I wanted to address is your issue with like the possibility of them being immaterial. And this and all or of them being immaterial, and I'll tie this all together for how we can like abstractly define like what an elementary particle is, and that's fine that at time equals t equals 1, it is not the same as it is a t equals 2 or whatever. But we know that, and we know that to be true in virtue of like some like equations provided, that being the spin equation, and that itself grants that it is material in the first place
No. Like
if
for
it has
example, just like how
extension.
if we lived in a simulation, and particles didn't actually exist locally and stuff, and things didn't exist locally, they were simulated from a more real reality, then you would not say those things are physical.
I don't see how that like connects though. I'm sorry.
Well, what are you confused about?
I think I already addressed. I already
Like
just said that
if the external
while
world
it is
is like
while it is
hold
true
on.
that like
Can I point out my main issues? So my main issues is you're trying to get necessity with the materialism. You're talking about the impossibility of like
yep,
idealism and stuff, right? My pro.
yep.
You say yup. Did you say yeah or no?
Oh wait, that it's like necessarily material or whatever the
Yeah. So
consciousness.
my issue is like you
Yep.
obviously have some like structure and way you're like I guess understanding reality, but like the problem of underdetermination just shows that like anything can. There's an infinite number of explanations that can explain anything. Right? And to say like to get
Well,
necessity from your view when you're not even certain upon like your empirical observation, it just seems a little bit arrogant.
already defined that while it is true that we cannot that it is like not I don't know, we can't necessarily like identify this like under Leibniz's thesis, like identify an elementary particle at time equals 1 to 2, that there is a possibility of change and there's no necessity where they're not there's no there's like necessity where they're not conditioned or whatever, there's no accidental properties where they can be changed or anything. Like yes, that's true, that's fine, but the abstract structure that defines the change itself or whatever is a physical phenomena. That's the equations that we describe. And me, for myself, and I'm going to tie it back to your simulation example, is that the running is not actually existing like within the game or the simulation or whatever. That's fine. At time equals wait, okay, yeah, this is where I was confused again. Wait, can you tell me one more time how
I'm
the
sorry.
simulation thing was relevant?
Yeah, so it's relevant because essentially if the case we can say like a simulation is analogous to like maybe like an illusion. Like let's say the external world doesn't exist and what you're experiencing is essentially just like an illusion. It's an immaterial reality, right? That your brain is essentially generating. You're like a brain in a vat, right? In that instance, right, it could be the case, or actually it would be the case that we would have immaterial things, despite the fact that we can still describe the things in the illusion that seemingly appear to be material processes. So like
Um,
it's just like it's like an
okay.
illusion. Like what you're describing could just be an illusion of a material process, right?
Okay. Okay. Now I finally understand what you're getting on. I know where this debate is going to lead now. I know you're questioning
Look,
the
I'm not. I'm
infallibility
just look,
of
look,
my.
look. I don't. I'm not rejecting the argument itself. Where I'm rejecting is the necessity part. If you want to say it's
I
likely, right?
okay. So I see your objection. It's the fallibility of like empiricism and anything outside cogito ergo sum. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, so do you want me to prove the existence of an external world, A, or B? Do you want me to like tell you the necessity like hashed out one more time?
Well, well, the necessity wouldn't. That would just be telling me your initial argument. Um, I would want probably like in like you don't have to just justify the external world. You have to necessarily guarantee the conclusion that the
Mm-hmm.
external world exists,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's just like it's going to
Yeah.
be a chain of deductions that's
All right.
required, right?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, I got you. The law of identity is essentially necessarily true. If the law of identity is necessarily true, then we can only have a coherent conversation where the words mean exactly themselves. Otherwise, we're saying jargon. For what we know of as
Wait,
a
pause. I'm granting the law
material
of
thing,
identity. I'm not putting into question the law of
yeah,
identity, but
yeah,
I
I know.
don't think.
This is just my argument.
Okay,
This is just my argument. The necessity of material things or
okay,
whatever,
go ahead.
or the interaction problem that it's like necessarily impossible. Uh,
Oh,
let's see.
wait,
Yeah,
wait,
a
wait.
material thing is
Hold on. Wait,
something
wait.
that.
There's a big issue. I'm sorry. There's a big issue. There's a really big issue. So the issue is right when you posit an
Mhm.
interaction problem, you're saying that there are two different substances, right? You're saying not substance but properties, right? You're saying there's physical, right, and you're saying there's immaterial, and it seems like that's the whole bringing up the interaction problem is actually begging the question because what's in question is whether there's actual physical things. And so to say that
whether
there's
there's
like an
actual
interaction
physical
problem,
things.
yeah. So like to say that there's an interaction
Yeah,
problem,
that's fine. I can just make an argument by virtue of like the semantic agents of what a physical thing is, and that grants the existence of physical things. Ugh.
so is that going to show that the external world exists?
It doesn't have to show the external world exists. It just necessarily shows within this hypothetical for what we know of as the material thing or an immaterial thing. It's impossible for them to have an interaction.
Yeah, but you keep so this is where I'm gonna keep saying you're begging the question because you in your talk about the interaction problem, you have to posit, right, that there are material and immaterial. And I'm saying the necessity of immaterial is getting put into question. I can even grant the interaction problem, right, and say that only one of these could exist. But that's not gonna get us to the external world actually existing.
The point of this debate, I'm not trying to argue the existence of an external world, that it's infallible for anything like external to our mind. This debate shows that there is some type of like semantic dispute that like involves a contradiction, interactions. Within this hypothetical, it shows for what we know of as like an immaterial object and a material object that it is modally impossible for them to interact. And this would be true in virtue that if the external world does exist, then this phenomena would be true by virtue of it being
Granted.
okay, granted. All right, great. Here's the hypothetical. If we define a material thing to be something that has extension, then an immaterial thing doesn't have an extension. If it's the case that a material thing lacks extension or whatever, then there is by no means that you can measure a material thing, and then it is an immaterial thing. So by the contrapositive, it's true that they must hold the property of extension.
You
All right.
understand the Gettier case though, right? Like something appearing to be the case
hold
doesn't.
on. Wait. Let me just. I know. Sometimes I like to just finish my whole argument. So,
Okay.
an immaterial thing is then just going to be the contrapositive, or just like the. It's just going to be the antonym to that. It lacks extension. For all physical events, or essentially there has to be a change. That's analytically true, and what an event is that there is a change in some type of time. If it is the case in some hypothetical world in which a immaterial thing actively creates an event or a change with a material thing, this is granted because that changes the extension or the accidental properties of a material thing, then the antecedent itself must necessarily hold accidental properties, changing properties, and therefore extension. And that's the issue of magnitude.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Like, I'm gonna lay out your argument, and you tell me if I'm representing it correctly. So, are you saying the thing that's going to be the necessary precondition for materialism is change? If you have something that's changed, that just shows that they are material objects.
Sorry, I was reading a text. Sorry, that was my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, like, are you saying that change is the necessary precondition to basically prove that materialism is the case? Like, if it's the case that we have change, then we have materialism.
If they hold accidental properties, then they're physical.
Well, how would you? It seems like there's a lot of ifs. You know, like if this is the case, then we can go from there, and then it's this, and then like if you grant all these ifs, and then it necessarily falls. Then, you know, it.
Yeah, I know. It's just virtue of like the semantics. So there's no hypothetical world in which something that holds accidental properties, and it's just automatically entailed that something with accidental properties is conditioned and therefore contingent on some type of like previous antecedent, and it can change. Essentially, like just it can change, and if it can change in its intrinsic properties, then these changes can therefore have a magnitude of change itself. And if it has magnitude, then that can entails extension and therefore physical.
Well, what's the argument for that? Because isn't the justification that you're using? You kind of have like your reasoning for materialism embedded for that based off of how you understand the material world. That's where you get it from. And it
If
seems like
something
then
can change,
it's
if
almost begging the
something can
question.
change, then it's entailed there's a magnitude of change, and therefore there's extension.
Yeah, but then you're using physics, which isn't necessarily
I'm not using
necessary.
physics.
Wait, so you're talking about change in mass, though, right?
Can you imagine a hypothetical scenario in which a change, or actually multiple in this case, if you imagine like a plethora of possible worlds in which this thing changes, can you imagine that the antecedent itself or whatever, or this thing can change in only one specific way?
What do you mean by the antecedent in this instance? If you had to correlate what the antecedent in this instance would be, what would it be?
Um, for okay, actually, I don't know if I could actually. It doesn't matter. Like
Do you want to postpone this? Because honestly, I'm worn out, dude. Like,
I mean, I can just give an example. I know what you're gonna say though, but like I don't know, like uh, say you throw a rock into a river, or whatever, and the splash is the change that occurs. Do you agree that that splash can be like more volatile or less volatile?
volatile, as in like powerful, like the change in like
Yeah, yeah.
no, because power presupposes mass, and then mass presupposes materialism.
Uh, sure, I can grant that. I can't think, I can't actually like demonstrate this without actually like giving essentially examples. The only way I can actually like talk about it through words is that some type of event means that there's some type of change. For there an event to occur, that there's some type of change um, from this like previous thing or whatnot. Um, if there is a change in something's intrinsic properties or whatever, then there's essentially like a displacement from time equals 1 to time equals 2. If there's a displacement, then there's some type of like I'm using distance in a figurative sense, to which like time, like the event or the thing in question at time equals 1 to time equals 2 where the change occurred um can be measured, and I'm using distance in more of a figurative sense.
Yeah, but it seems that you haven't properly sorted out the presuppositions that comes along with the view.
There was a presupposition kind of in the first one I showed you, but in this one itself, it shows that for there to be like a change, as if you were to define a change. I don't even know how to explain this without drawing it out. Do you want me to just like
It's
explain it through
weird
like
because
words and you
because
try to imagine it?
there's I think I know what you're talking about, but there's another issue. Because when you say change, you're just referencing from like one thing with intrinsic properties changing to another thing with an additive or a lessative property, right?
Okay, so oh, my AirPods are about to die. So, yeah, kind of. So if you were to imagine like 2 points or whatever, like imagine just like a void of just black, and then one like white dot or whatever, a singular point or whatever, and then something influences a change or an event. There's like an event. And you can imagine like that one stays, that one remains stationary, and there's another dot that appears, and that's the consequent of the change that occurred. Now, say you were to like draw a line between these two, and this is just more of just like a hypothetical. That's great or whatever. Now, if that's the case, then the fact that you're able to kind of like, and again, this is more of in a figurative sense, but the fact that there is a change, like some type of like temporal, kind of like a temporal like regression between like point one and point two. That means that it can kind of be extended on in virtue of like the regression.
But when you're talking about change, doesn't that suppose that it's the case that these things have causal relations?
Yeah, that does
I mean, like
presuppose that,
via
and
the
yeah,
principle,
I don't have a problem with that.
but But then, like, it would seem weird because, like, then you'd be bringing the principle of causality into it, and then that would also suppose the case that materialism, or at least there are some material things. Like, it just like it's really
Causality
hard. It seems
analytically
like any
implies
attempt to like,
change.
huh?
Causality already like implies change like analytically.
Yeah. Well, then if you're not
That's
talking
actually
about
just a biconditional. Change exists if and only if like causality exists. That's just
no,
analytically true.
I would disagree. Um,
There's no way you can imagine like causality existing without change existing as well.
Wait,
Cause and
there's no
effect.
way you can imagine that causality existing without change existing. Well, I
Oh
agree.
my god.
Well, hold on. I agree that if it's the case that you have causality, right, in the sense you have matter and energy going from one state to another, then it's going to be the case that you have a change by definition. That's going to be analytically.
No, don't use that tactic. I kept this in a without presupposing some type of like physicalist thesis. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Wait, I wasn't
Causality
I
doesn't.
wasn't presupposing anything. I was saying if it's the case that we have because causality is just energy from one state to another. Is that wrong?
Yeah, no problem.
That's what I'm saying. So when you're talking about energy,
Okay.
right, going from one state to another, it seems to suppose that at bare minimum, physicalism is true to some extent.
Okay. Yeah, great. Okay, so it's biconditional. So you agree that it's causality is going from one event to another?
Um, causality
Yeah,
is going
yeah,
to be
yeah. That's what you
energy.
just said.
Causality is going to be energy going from one point to another, and then you describe that as in that's it. That as
No,
wait, hold on.
no,
Let me
no, no, no,
clarify. Let me
no.
clarify. Let me clarify. Let me clarify. So you describe causality as energy going from one state to another, and yes, that is change. But it doesn't follow because that is change that then change is the only thing, then that is like change doesn't
Bro, I
only
don't.
have to be energy.
Bro.
What?
Like, come on, like, bro, just granted, like, like they're biconditional, like, and we don't actually have to like reduce this to a scope of like, we already have knowledge on like the ontology of like, I don't
But
know, like
I'm not gonna lie.
two.
We're gonna have to continue another day because I'm worn out.